The markets have seen a terrible end of 2024 as the negativity surrounding Tether being banned has been swamping the markets, in which we are likely going to see a crash according to social media. What is going to happen after the 1st of January for Tether and crypto? That's what we're going to discuss in this video surrounding Tether, MiCA and more. Let's get started.
Hey, as you know, I'm a huge football fan, and our sponsor OKX is currently running a promotion with Manchester City. If you create a new account and you deposit €1,000 and you keep it on there for 7 days, you get one of those shirts for free at your home. And on top of that, you might be able to win a 2-person VIP all paid experience to go to Manchester City Chelsea. Go to okx.com/cryptomichnl. Make sure to get that account and maybe we'll see each other at the Manchester City game.
First of all, Happy New Year. It's a 2025. It's the 8th year that I'm working in this space. I've been making videos since 2018, 2019. Back in my student apartment where I didn't have any camera. So things have changed, but one thing didn't change, which is the Tether FUD. Back in 2018, we had this already. We have seen surrounding negativity from big influencer accounts. Back in 2018, and I just looked it up again, it's still an active account. It's called Bitfinex. Tether is very much aligned with Bitfinex. But there are certain accounts constantly saying that Tether is a bubble or fake company or it's just thin money creation. And again, there is a new topic surrounding the markets, which is basically aligning with the current sentiment. The markets haven't been very positive in terms of price action, and then negative news comes around, takes over, fueling that actual sentiment. And this time it's again surrounding Tether, which is nothing new. It is again the same old story. So I wanted to discuss that topic today. I wanted to highlight MiCA and I wanted to highlight the impact on stablecoins for a little bit. But first, Tether in itself is a super profitable company. I've got the data here, and in Q2 of 2024, it has been making more than $1 billion in operating profit. Actually, in entire first half of 2024, it made a net profit of more than 5 billion, which says a lot about the strength of the actual company, in which it's also claiming that it is fully backed and over-collateralized in the sense that Tether is completely solvent. So I'll get back to that in a little bit, but that says that it's not really a fake company. It's actually doing really well. It's the most easy company that exists. But now there is a lot of FUD arising and actually making the markets go down in the sense that the altcoins are correcting at this point, as there is a question of, is Tether going to be fueling another Terra Luna crash, some people say, or at least an altcoin crash happening after the 1st of January, as Tether said that it's not going to be compliant with MiCA. First question we need to answer is, what is MiCA? Well, MiCA is something that is impacting the European markets. It's called the Markets in Crypto Assets Regulation. And it's essentially a framework that needs to be worked with on all the companies that are operating in the crypto markets, whether you are an asset manager, whether you are a exchange, a broker, or a stablecoin, you need to be compliant to that framework, as the ultimate goal is to provide a regulatory environment for investors' protection and financial stability. In my opinion, it has a lot of pluses and it has a lot of minuses. So in terms of pluses, it is opening up innovation in the sense that a lot of bigger entities and corporates are also able to get into the markets. We are having a fair playing field between them. But in terms of being a startup, it's harder to get into the markets as the entry barriers are super high. And I think for us as a consultancy, for instance, it is too hard to obtain the actual license. But for you as an investor, it makes more sense because all the companies that operate in Europe need to be transparent, need to be trusted through this license, and need to obtain that license, which makes it safer for you to invest into crypto. And that also means that stablecoins need to be compliant through very strict operational and reserve requirements, through which you are less exposed to liquidity risks, which we have seen in the past few years with, for instance, Terra Luna or an exchange that collapsed. So this is basically designed to avoid any of those things that we have been having in the years before. And in that sense, it's a positive way to generate more adoption. Now, the tricky part is that Tether of all the companies isn't really that transparent with that data. They are having some data points where they say, well, it's fully backed, whether it is with stables, whether it is with cash deposits or notes. They say that they are completely backed. Every USDT is backed by one USD, but they are not that transparent, which makes it not compliant enough with what the European regulatory entity actually wants it to be. So how does USDT work? Well, basically, as a Web2 company or a Web2 investor, you go towards Tether and you say, I want to buy $1 million in Tether. So I want to transfer $1 million USD to you, and I want to get back $1 million in USDT. Usually you pay a few percent in terms of fees for that, and that is actually what Tether is doing. So you transfer $1 million in USD towards Tether, Tether mints 1 million USDT and transfer that to you and gets a cut for the actual transaction. That's why this is a super simple, most profitable company that exists. And that's why you can see that the 5 billion is actually a super positive number. So the fact that they are operating in that way, but they are not too transparent, is nothing new. The actual regulatory environment for stablecoins already started since the 30th of June of 2024. So that's already in effect for more than 6 months at this point. The only change that we have is that since the 1st of January 2025, we have the same framework for exchanges. And then still, we have a transition period of 18 months in most of the European countries before it's actually completely applicable in terms of regulation. Now, USDT doesn't have a big market in Europe. Their primarily markets are USA and MENA regions, and the European market is by far the smallest market, in which they said, well, with Tether, we are not going to be looking for the compliance with MiCA. As a matter of fact, we invest into a company that's called Stabler, and Stabler, it's actually a Dutch company, but they are a euro-backed stablecoin that is compliant with MiCA. So for Tether, it is easier to invest into a company that is already compliant with the currency that we use here and then enter the markets, as with Tether alone, they can still operate in the USA and in the MENA region. So what does this mean for you? Well, exchanges are likely going to remove USDT from the exchange because the exchanges need to be compliant with MiCA at this point. And instead of USDT, you'll be able to trade against USDC or Euro. And most of the exchanges have been taking a proactive stance in which they have removed USDT from the exchange already. For instance, our partner OKX has removed USDT from most of the European countries way before the 1st of January 2025, and there basically hasn't been any impact on the markets. One tip that I would like to give to you is to, if you have any future positions that you are trading against USDT, to close those positions and open new ones against USDC if you're able to do so. But overall, I think that there will be a short liquidity crunch taking place as market makers need to swap towards the USDC pairs and the liquidity needs to move towards the new ones. But overall, I do not believe that there is going to be a market crash of Tether being removed. I think it's a kind of sell the rumor, buy the news type of thing where people are selling going into the actual event of the 1st of January or the first period of January. And once they start to see that nothing really happens into the markets, that's the moment where the markets are going to reverse. So I think it's a good topic to discuss, but it's primarily being fueled by accounts to spread negativity. And for you as an investor, again, it gives you the opportunity to scoop up some altcoins on very low prices, which we're going to look at in the next part. So the question now is, what are we going to expect from the markets? And usually when this type of negativity happens, the altcoins are the ones that are actually dropping the most. But that's not the case for ETH. It is the case that Bitcoin has been correcting, and as we can see with the ETF flow, the last weeks were super negative in terms of Bitcoin inflow or outflow. In this sense, we are seeing a lot of outflow taking place in the last few weeks before the year's end. The reason for that is relatively simple, which is the fact that asset managers are rebalancing their portfolios at the end of the year. They take their performance fee, they rebalance, they restructure, just taking profits off the tables. That's usually what happens in the final weeks of the year. And the Bitcoin ETF is the actual ETF that has been generating a lot of revenue, in which you can expect this to take place every year. What can we expect from the Bitcoin ETF going into January? Very likely we're going to see an inflow in the first weeks of January, because that is when the new investments come in, or when the new rebalancing takes place, the new strategies are going to be applicable. So that's very likely to expect. And the interesting part is that the Ethereum ETF doesn't see any of these terms of outflow at this point. And the reason for that is super simple, is that there is not really any revenue being made by the investments that people or investors did in the Ethereum ETF. Or it's also the case that there's a likelihood of Ethereum to be outperforming Bitcoin in the upcoming period, because if you look at the Ethereum pair against Bitcoin, then we haven't really seen any downwards momentum since the 17th of December. We are currently just consolidating and have actually been going up since the low has been taking place. So Ethereum is doing really well against Bitcoin, and it starts to show some slight signals of upwards momentum taking place, or rotation taking place, that once the Tether FUD is done, this is likely going to continue to move upwards, especially since we see that the yields have peaked for now, in which we have been seeing a run on the 10-year yield towards 4.63%, and currently we have been seeing a slight drop towards 4.50%. And if this downwards momentum continues to happen, the lower the yields go, especially with Trump coming in next month, or actually this month, if the yields are going to continue to fall, it's going to fuel Ethereum in its momentum, and it's also going to fuel the momentum into the altcoin market. And when you look at the altcoin markets, in the sense that you're looking at the total tree, for instance, which is the altcoin market cap in USDT valuation, then at this point we've seen a substantial big run crossing the all-time high, and now we're just having a very general correction taking place on the markets, with a very likelihood of being close towards the end of this correction. Maybe beginning January, we continue to have 1 or 2 weeks of this correction, then we rotate back up. So that is all very positive to see. And especially if you look at Ethereum against USDT, then you can see that we are still fighting the markets at this point, in the sense that we're stuck in this range. We're currently retesting some levels, and we have been seeing this big correction taking place primarily due to the Tether FUD. But all in all, if we look at the altcoins valuations, and if we start to look at most of them, for instance, optimism against Bitcoin, it is currently seeing a lot of volume coming into the actual pairs, showing that there is interest at this point, showing that there is the accumulation taking place. And as Ethereum against Bitcoin is already crawling up, and the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem is currently consolidating or correcting by a little bit, there's a gap between the two, and that says that the entire Ether ecosystem is still substantially undervalued. So with my portfolio, I stay within those, and I think that being at the cycle low at this point with these altcoins is still a good opportunity to go into, and that negative sentiment surrounding Tether is just a little bit too extensive. So looking at optimism against USDT, we are back at the accumulation period. I think that with these tests taking place around $1.60, we might be sweeping the low again and then do a V-shape back up towards $2.70, probably in the first 2 months of the year, and then we start to continue moving upwards. The same can be said for something like SAI, which is currently having the exact same sort of correction. And when we look at the Bitcoin pair, we can see that it's also getting at the cycle low again, which shows that there is a current negativity surrounding the altcoin markets. And if we finalize this with XRP, we can see that XRP has been seeing a lot of momentum. It has seen a run from 50 cents to $2.50. But at this point, we are just having a very normal correction, going back into higher time frame support zones, which for you are a period to get into those positions while you might feel that it's very awkward to do so. So all in all, I think that the surrounding negativity of Tether is super overextended, doesn't really make sense, and those current corrections are very likely to provide you an opportunity where we are in a stage of sell the rumor, buy the news, which means that once the 1st of January and the first weeks of January are going to be done, it is going to be providing you a reverse of the markets going back into neutral, which means that the markets are going to go back up. Thank you very much for watching to this update. I'll be back on Sunday with my strategy and all those things again with a new update. Make sure to subscribe and I'll see you again on Sunday. Ciao!